Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our event on getting started with Looker. My name is Lauren, and I'm the content manager for the Google Cloud community. Also joining us today from the community team is Roderick. Do you mind briefly introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Lauren. So, my name is Roderick. I'm a community manager on the Google Cloud community team. We are super excited to welcome you all to the Google Cloud community. You may have seen me interacting in kind of the old Looker community and now in the new Looker community. We're so excited to have you as part of our family. If you have any questions or concerns, know that you can always tag me into a conversation or send me a personal message. Back to you, Lauren.
Amazing. Thank you, Roderick. And I'm very excited to also welcome several members of the Looker team, including Alex, Sammy, and Paige, who will be taking us through the content and answering your questions today. So questions are encouraged. I see we already have some people jumping into the chat. So please feel free to add your questions into the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from, and we'll be sure to get to them in the chat or at the end of the presentation. We also have a few pre-submitted questions, so we'll be covering those as well. For any questions that we don't get to live, please share them in the Looker community, and the link to that is in the YouTube description, and we'll do our best to follow up with you on those. And with that, we will go ahead and jump into the presentation. Thanks, everyone, and I'll hand it over to the team.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lauren. So my name is Alex, and I'm a data analytics customer success manager. And today we are going to start with a brief overview of Looker and some common use cases for the platform. Then Paige will demo how to connect your database to Looker and create a dashboard. And then finally, we will wrap up with a brief Q&A. All right. So let me hand it over to Sammy.
Hey everyone, I'm Sammy. I'm also a Cloud BI CSM here at Looker and Google. And Looker is an enterprise BI platform that provides the foundation to access trusted data and empower users, going beyond the traditional BI landscape with machine learning and AI integrations, a universal semantic layer, and API connectivity. The Looker BI family includes Looker, Looker Studio, and Looker Studio Pro.
And so now that we are a part of the Google family, we can still leverage Looker semantic layer through other Google products, such as Google Workspace, and even activate the product now via the Cloud Console.
So let's take a second to talk about data experiences. What are they? Data experiences can represent any number of ways in which companies drive value from data. Looker's platform offers a unified surface to access the truest, most up-to-date version of your data.
And so by democratizing data for your organization through our easy-to-use tools, business users can answer questions themselves without needing to know SQL. This allows your BI team to focus on more strategic work versus building one-off reports. And LookML stands for Looker Modeling Language. It's the language that is used in Looker to create semantic data models. You can use LookML to describe dimensions, aggregates, calculations, and data relationships in your SQL database. Users in your company can then build their own reports, knowing it comes from a governed source of truth.
In addition to Looker, Looker Studio enables anyone to start analyzing their data in a few minutes, whether that's model data in the data warehouse, data in a sheet, or a combination of the two. It's easy to create beautiful, quickly shareable reports that leverage the speed and power of BigQuery and BI engine to get insights from large amounts of data in a snap.
And Looker Studio can be a great jumping off point to answer questions about your data and to make reports on the fly. However, you may run into some problems with using Looker Studio at scale and getting a complete picture of your entire data landscape, which is why we're introducing Looker Studio Pro to make self-service work for the enterprises. With Looker Studio Pro, you get better visibility, better team collaboration, and more support.
This slide illustrates the differences between the three offerings. Looker Studio is a free self-service BI tool with simple visualizations. Looker Studio Pro costs $7 a user per month. It comes with SLAs and content management capabilities, and we're working on adding more features. And the Looker platform is focused on governed modeling, enterprise management, embedded data experiences, and developer tooling. Modeling built via the Looker platform is leverageable by Looker Studio and our Google Workspace productivity suite.
Now we're going to jump into some Looker use cases. Trend forecasting, inventory control, marketing strategy, and consumer behavior Perhaps no industry relies more heavily on data than retail. How well retailers use their data has a direct correlation to customer lifetime value and overall financial success. Especially in trying economic times, data can be key to understanding, navigating, and solving new challenges. So let's take a look at Vivino, who found that by using fast engagement, they could turn poor ratings from dissatisfied customers to satisfied, loyal customers. People don't usually tell online merchants what went wrong. They just walk away, never to be heard from again. But online wine retailer Vivino used Looker to dig deeper, reach out quickly, and turn unhappy customers into loyal ones. Vivino uses a Looker dashboard to trace how users rate their wine after receiving a shipment. If a negative rating for wine is posted, a custom alert notifies the Vivino operations and customer service team, and a representative immediately follows up with the individual, addresses their concern, and makes a tailor-made offer. Through this fast action, Vivino has substantially increased customer satisfaction and, as a result, more retention.
Today's biggest financial service challenges are all driven by data. For Global Payments is a leading payments technology company. The CIO wanted to establish a cloud-first strategy and create a best-in-class engagement platform with embedded BI for customers. With Looker, Global Payments was able to build a custom application to help their customers understand their transactions. This helped to provide secure self-service analytics to customers in real time, with the option to customize and ask new questions.
And so now I'm gonna hand it over to Paige to show a quick demo.
Awesome. Actually, do you guys mind just sharing your screen, continuing to share your screen, and then just flipping over, and then I'll start sharing my screen when I do the demo.
Perfect.
Awesome. Great. So before we actually do a live walkthrough of the Looker product, going from that database all the way to building a dashboard, I wanted to just give a little bit of context in terms of how Looker is architected, so that you have that in mind as you watch the live demo, right? Because there's a couple of key features here that are going to be important to keep in mind as we walk through the product, right? So with Looker, we have what's called an in-database architecture, right? So that means a couple of different things. First of all, it means the data is always going to be stored in the warehouse that it lives in, right? We're not going to be ingesting data into the back end of the tool, which means we're not going to be pre-aggregating or storing stale data in Looker itself, right? So that gives us a couple of main advantages. It ensures that the data is always fresh, and it ensures that there's a single source of truth with completeness and freshness that's going to be required for decision making, right? With data staying in the database, in Looker, what we do is we store a semantic modeling layer using LookML, which is the language that we use to define business logic for a given organization, right? So we build a model in LookML. That model is our semantic modeling layer, which is stored in Looker. And then in terms of data delivery, here at the top, you can see that there are a number of ways in which we can deliver insights to an organization, right? When we think about BI, we tend to think visualizations, dashboards, charts, and Looker certainly does that very well. But we also have a very strong self-service offering, which allows non-technical users to self-serve on data without needing to know SQL or other programming languages. And we also integrate natively with a number of different third-party tools. And you can also build custom integrations to send data that's curated and stored in Looker outside to custom workflows or custom platforms that you have in-house. And then to take sort of a step further, you can also build applications on top of Looker. And what we mean by that is you can either embed content built in Looker into your application via an iframe, or you can also call the Looker API in order to take those governed metrics and serve them up in a more custom way to either your internal users or even to external customers as well via those custom applications. So now that we've sort of set a little bit of context in terms of how Looker is architected, which is different than a lot of other tools out there on the market, I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can start understanding how you can get started with Looker. So let me go ahead and present. Okay. Good to go? Awesome. So I've logged into our demo instance of Looker. And we're landed on our homepage here where we can view content that's already been created. Now, in Looker, there's a couple of different types of environments that are intended for different types of end users, right? So as a non-technical end user, I can always view content that's available to me here on my homepage. So I can access the dashboards and looks, which are what we call standalone charts here that I've saved. I can also view content that's been recently viewed by myself and by others in my organization. And then here on the left-hand side, I can also view boards or folders, which are collections of similarly related content that can be shared across users as well. And then up on the left-hand side here, we can see the different types of environments that Looker has that are corresponding to typically different user types. So again, as a business user or a non-technical user, I can access content here, or I can also explore data in my explore environment. In other words, I can ask questions of and get answers to data in real time without needing to bother my technical team or understand SQL, right? Develop is where our developers spend most of their time. That is where we store LookML. LookML, again, is the language that we use to define business logic, and it's how Looker understands how to translate that logic into SQL in real time. And then finally, we obviously have our admin section where an administrator can do things like configure settings at the instance level, understand who is interacting with Looker and what they're doing, as well as how the database and instance are performing. Provisioning users happens here. And then we also, this is also the place where we set up our database connection, which is sort of the first step to getting started with building analytics in Looker. So I'll jump into my connections page. You can see here that we've actually set up quite a few database connections already. Again, this is a demo instance, so we have quite a few set up. For the purposes of this particular demo, we'll be working with a retail data set. So think about an e-commerce retailer that stocks and sells multiple brands through a web portal, right? That's the data set that we'll be working with. That data set is located here in this Looker private demo connection. So this is, again, the one that we'll be starting with. Jumping over into our development environment, we'll be able to start building our model here in Looker. So I actually went ahead and created a project already that's called Retail Analytics. This is what we'll be using to build out our business metrics and relationships for our end users. Now, the files that you're looking at are integrated with the GitHub repository that allows for version control and collaboration, as well as a built-in developer workflow. So again, I did do a little bit of pre-work before this, so I did set up some of these files already, but I'll walk through what each file type means and how you would go about creating them from scratch as well. So you'll see here, I created this model file called retail, and I pointed it at the database connection that I just showed you in our connections page. So again, before we got to this step, we would have created or set up that JDBC connection to, in this case, our BigQuery data warehouse. And then I just created a project and a model that points at that particular connection, okay? This basically just tells Looker that we're gonna use this data set in the context of this project, right? And then from here, we can start to auto-generate LookML based on the columns and the tables, so the metadata that already exists in my database. So using the generate view from table option, I'll find the tables that I want to analyze. Again, Looker will scan the database connection that I've set up, and I can find the tables that I want to analyze and select them. So what I'm actually going to want to do is reload this page because I think it's not in development mode just yet. Yep. So what I'm going to want to do first is flip on development mode. You recall that I already mentioned that I integrated this set of files with GitHub, right? So we have a built-in developer workflow that allows us to do things like version control, roll back to old versions, for example, create branches to collaborate with other developers. It also means that I can work and develop in this sort of development mode, this sort of context that is separate from what end users work off of, right? So in this development mode, I'm working off my personal branch, so I can make changes to all the files that we'll see throughout the demo. I can test them out, I can validate them, and I can also work in different areas of Looker in this development mode without impacting end users, right? So I went ahead and I flipped on development mode. The reason that you didn't see these files when I turned off that development mode is because Again, these only exist within the context of my personal branch. At the end of the demo, I'll push all these files into production where we can see that end users can then start to interact with the metrics that we'll build. So again, I just mentioned that now that we've pointed our model at the connection that we set up, we have the ability to start generating views based on tables that exist within our data set. So I'll go ahead and create view from table. I'm gonna go ahead and open this in a new tab. Again, Looker's gonna scan my schema. In this case, it's our ecom data set. I'm gonna go ahead and scroll through the tables that we see here. I can optionally select 10 to get a little bit more information about what might be in these tables. So 10 being 10 records. And what I'll do is I'll select the tables that I know are going to be relevant for analysis, right? So information about distribution centers, maybe inventory items, order items, products, and users. Once we've selected those tables, it's as easy as creating those views, okay? So once I create those views, coming back to our developer environment here, Looker will actually go ahead and generate one view per table. So I'll come back to the model and explain a little bit more about how we think about the difference between models and views in just a second. But coming into our order items view, again, Looker scanned my order items table within BigQuery, and it generated this view file based on the columns that exist there. So Looker will generate a dimension for each column, as well as some aggregated fields when it detects columns that are likely going to be aggregated, okay? So you'll see here, for example, Looker is detecting this ID column. It's going to understand the data type that it's working with, whether it's a primary key, and then it's also going to point at the column itself, right? So we'll again have a dimension for each column. Another really fantastic feature is that Looker can also detect date or timestamp types of data, and then create these timeframes that allow an end user to slice and dice by these aggregate timeframes like date, week, month, without having to do any gnarly SQL functions to transform dates. If I scroll down, I can also show you an example where Looker generated a measure based on our sale price column. So this is something that doesn't necessarily exist in our raw data, but Looker is able to recognize that we might want to sum sale price, and it will auto-generate this total sale price measure that's summing this sales price object, okay? So in addition to these pre-existing metrics, which tend to already be in our data, right? We can also create new metrics by referencing existing objects in the view, okay? This is a key concept in modeling with Looker because we're able to reuse objects across our project. So this makes it really easy to maintain our model and avoid having to make changes in multiple places. So for example, let's say we wanted to create a new measure or a new aggregation based on something that already exists within this view. So we're already summing our total sale price, right? We're summing all of the sale price values across all of our order items, right? But let's say we wanted to also create an average, right? We want to understand maybe on average, what are these items selling for? So it's really simple in Looker, again, in code, to simply add in a measure, name it something unique like average sale price. And then I can add in the type of aggregation that I want to perform. So I'm going to select average. And then I'm just going to use our SQL parameter here to very simply refer to the sale price object that we're going to be averaging, right? So we're not hard coding SQL here. We're just simply referring to other objects in the view that themselves can be updated with those updates flowing automatically into the measures and dimensions that are based on them. So we're sort of taking SQL and we're making it a little bit more object-oriented here. I'm going to add a value format to make it a little bit more user-friendly. And then I'm going to save my changes. You'll notice that as I add in code in LookML, there's a quick help section on the right-hand side here that updates automatically and gives more context as to how the parameters that I choose to use are going to impact how Looker behaves, right? So in this case, we can see adding a value format will specify custom formatting for Looker cells. Or if I click into my type, we can see all of the ways in which we can aggregate some calculate percentiles out of the box with Looker. And we also have links to our documentation here as well. So if I wanted to understand more about what this type means, we can really easily link out to our docs to understand exactly how using each type of measure will correspond to a particular sort of behavior in Looker. So coming back into my order items view, I'm going to save, and then I can also validate my LookML. So we have a built-in code validator that makes sure that the code that I'm writing isn't going to produce any errors on the front end. So now that we have a series of views, right? So we have all of these views that we auto-generated from our database. We've added a single measure. We also want to expose these metrics to end users so they can start analyzing and visualizing data, right? So that's sort of the next step, right? We have all this LookML. How do we allow end users to start using it to answer questions about what's going on in the data, right? So to do that, we're going to want to head back to our model file where I've actually created an explorer based on our order items view. So coming back into our model, as you recall, we started here, and this is where we specified which connection, which data set we want Looker to pull from, right? I've created this explorer here that's based on just our order items view. Now, an explorer is essentially a data set, right? It contains one or more views that have been joined together with a specific relationship. So explorers at a high level are just the way that we expose this business logic to end users in our platform, right? So it can be as simple as just adding in this order items view, which I've already done here. So again, now that I've created this explorer where I'm exposing these order items, it's now going to be available for me to explore as an end user. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over into this explore environment where I can see all of the dimensions that I've added. Now, you will recall that I added in the average sale price. So when I refresh my Explorer, you'll see that the measure I just added in can now be used and tested in my Explore environment. So again, this development mode that we see up here is persisting throughout all the environments in Looker. So it's really easy to add measures, test out how they work in the Explore environment and even in dashboards before we actually push those changes into production, which I'll show you at the end of the demo. So this Explorer, which I called retail orders, right? So I labeled it as retail orders over here in our model, right? To make it a little bit more user-friendly. This Explorer can now be used to analyze data in our order items table without needing to write SQL, okay? So for example, I can add in something like total sale price to understand total revenue from my online store. So if I go ahead and run my query, Looker will return the total sum sale price from that column. If we toggle over to our SQL tab, we can actually see what Looker is doing behind the scenes in order to produce this result. So we can see, in other words, how Looker is translating a question in sort of business terms, right? I'm just adding in total sale price. How Looker is translating that into SQL in real time and returning very fresh information from my data set. So now I have my total sale price. I can also do things like start to filter the data that I'm seeing. So maybe I want to exclude orders that have been canceled, right? Which wouldn't actually really be reflecting my revenue. So I can really easily add in a filter to exclude canceled orders. I can rerun my query. Again, Looker is going to respond by adding a where clause in this case. For those of you who know SQL, you can see that Looker speaks SQL and it writes the most performant SQL possible, meaning that we're able to easily exclude data that may not be relevant for the question that we're asking without needing to know how to write that in SQL. So now I have a new result. And I could always continue to ask questions using the metrics that I see on the left-hand side here. Again, the metrics on the left-hand side can be used in any combination to ask a question, but what if I want to save this as a tile on a dashboard, right? What I'm getting at is that this environment has a couple of different purposes. You can always use it to ask questions and get real-time results, but it's also the place where we create content that we saw on the homepage when we first logged into Looker. So from here, I can use our edit pop-out to make changes to the look and feel. In this case, it's just a single value visualization, a single tile. So I'm just going to add in a simple label and then add it to the dashboard that we'll be building together as part of this demo. So I'll just name this total revenue. And then from here, I'm going to save onto a new dashboard. So I'll save. I also have options here, by the way, to download this data or send or share outside of the platform as well. So when I showed that architecture slide earlier, I sort of introduced this concept that Looker can go beyond just visualizing data. It can also be used to integrate data that has a single source of truth, right, into other workflows. So if I wanted to send or share to a Slack channel or Google chat room, that's also possible from this interface as well. For now, I'm going to save it as a new dashboard. So here I will select the folder that I want to save it to. By default, each end user in Looker will have their own personal folder that's only visible by them and by an administrator. Optionally, I could also save it into a shared folder where I can make that content visible and even editable by other users within my organization. The folder mechanism is also how we handle permissioning at the content level. But for now, I'm just going to save it into my personal folder. I'm just going to call this Dashboard Retail Analytics. And we'll come back to this at the end, where I'll walk through how you can configure and control sort of the look and feel of the dashboard environment as well. So saving this. I'm going to add another tile while we're here as well, just to make sure that we have a little bit more to work with on that dashboard. So I'll go ahead and remove total sale price, and I'm going to add in average sale price instead. Let's go ahead and run this query. I'm going to keep this status field applied. And then I'm going to edit, again, my title here. Instead of total revenue, I'm going to call it average sale price. And then we'll go ahead and save again, but instead of saving as a new dashboard, I'll go ahead and add it in to the existing dashboard that I already have. So I'll save to an existing dashboard. I'll find my folder. Here's a dashboard we just created. I will title my tile something different, something like average sale price, KPI. And then I'll go ahead and I'll save to my dashboard. Now, let's say that I want to understand more about who's ordering from the site and not just information about the order items themselves. So in other words, what happens when I want to query not just information from one view or one table, right? Again, a view is an abstraction of a table. So typically, a view is going to be limited to the metrics that can be calculated from that one table, with exceptions, of course, right? What happens when I want to understand what's happening across multiple tables and include information about products, users, inventory items, in addition to the views or the metrics that we already see here? So if I head back to my model, I can easily join in additional information from my user's view, okay? So this is going to allow for analysis across tables. And to do this, I'll just join in my user's view, which I already did here, but commented it out, right? So once I uncomment, we can see that I simply specified a join within the context of my Explorer. I specified the view that I wanted to bring in. In this case, it's the user's view. And then I specified the relationship between these views as well. So in this case, because one user can have many order items, but the reverse is not true, we know that this is a many-to-one relationship, with the many being the first view that we joined in. And then I simply specify the column that we want to join in on. I'll save my changes. I'll validate the lookml that I've written again. No errors. And then I can come back into the Explorer that we've been working with. Again, this is our Retail Orders Explorer. And I can refresh the Explorer to bring in this additional view. Okay. So now that we have done that, we now have two dropdowns on the left-hand side. We have all of the dimensions and the measures, including this custom measure we created. And then we also have our users dropdown, where we can now understand who's ordering from our site, where they're located, and other information about our users, okay? So let's say I want to understand maybe about how revenue has increased over time, but I want to add a component from my user's view as well. I'm going to go ahead and remove the filter that I have. I'm actually going to remove everything from that's been selected so I can start from scratch. Okay, so let's say we want to understand the total revenue or total sale price. I'm going to add in a date component or a time series component here. I want to see how this is increased by week. So I've added in these two measures here. I'm going to run this query to see what this looks like. And we can see how total revenue has grown over time, right? Now, let's say we want to see how this differs from gender, right? So I'm going to go ahead and pivot on that. I'm going to go ahead and run my query. And then, again, we can see that now Looker is returned fresh information to answer my question. And not only is it selecting from our order items view, but it now knows how to join in information from my users table as well. Okay. So coming back to my result set, here's the raw data that we're looking at. And then here is the visualization, right? Looker will always select a default visualization that it thinks makes the most sense depending on the data that you've included. I personally think an area chart would look best in this scenario. So I'm going to sort of configure the look and feel until I'm happy with it. And then I'll save this tile again onto the dashboard that we created. So I'll use my edit pop out. I'm going to change it to a stack so that we can more easily see the total revenue in addition to how it breaks out by gender. And then I can do things like maybe hide access names that are redundant. It's pretty obvious here that we're visualizing over time, so I don't think I need that access value. And then from there, I can go ahead and save again to an existing dashboard that I've already created in my folder. I can call this maybe revenue by gender. So I've configured look and feel. I'm going to fix my typo and I'll save onto my dashboard. Now, again, everything we've done so far, right, has been in development mode, which we can tell by this blue bar that's across the screen, right? So this means, again, that I'm working off my personal development branch where all the code we've seen is stored. So if an end user logged into Looker and tried to load this Explore or the dashboard that I created, they wouldn't be able to do so because I haven't committed this code into the production branch, which is what all end users will work off of, okay? So in order to make this visible for those end users, I'll want to push this code into production. So I'm going to go back into my model to do so. Before I do that, I'll just give a quick, review of what we've done so far. We've reviewed that we've already established a JDBC connection into the BigQuery project that we'll use for the purposes of this demo. We then generated some views based on tables that exist within the schema in BigQuery. We created a new calculated aggregate measure called average sale price by averaging the sale price dimension here. We joined that order items view into an Explorer or a data set, which means that an end user can then start analyzing that data on the front end without needing to know SQL. And then we joined in our users view by specifying the relationship to the existing view that was joined in, as well as the common columns to perform the join on. Okay. From there, we built some visualizations in the Explorer that we created, and we saved them onto a dashboard. So now all of that work, again, I want to push it into production and make it available for end users and other developers to start working off of. So I'll commit my changes and push using this button here. Again, this is going to commit these changes into the Git repo that I explained earlier. I'm going to add a message about what we did. So I'm just going to say generated initial views. Views and retail orders Explore. I'll commit first. Once I've committed, I'm able to now deploy into production. So that step is complete now. And I have this message here, which tells me that my personal branch is now up to date with production, meaning I can exit this development mode, reload my page. And now in read-only mode, right? Read-only tells us that this is the code that all end users are going to be working off of. Now we see all of the stuff that we built together, right? So what that means is that I can go back into my Explorer and I can refresh my page again to remove that developer mode, and we still have the users and the order items fields that we started with. So you'll recall that we saved a bunch of these tiles onto a dashboard. Okay, now that dashboard is visible for an end user, I'm going to find it by going back to my home page, going into my folder. Again, this is my personal folder where we've saved this dashboard. Now, in order to make changes to a dashboard, I can go ahead and flip on edit mode. A little bit different than development mode. Again, this edit mode is in the context of an end user who can make changes to content in this mode, okay? So from here, I can always edit look and feel, so I can sort of slide around my tiles and resize them depending on how I want my dashboard to look and feel. I can also edit the tiles themselves by clicking on the menu option on each tile and then clicking edit. So if I wanted to edit maybe the colors or even the metrics being used here, I can do so by editing from the dashboard. This will pop up that familiar Explore interface where I can then make my changes in the overlay and then save. This is also the place where we can do things like add global filters. So for example, if I wanted to allow someone to filter by order date, I'll simply select the field. I can configure a default value, maybe the last 30 days. I can select the tiles that I want to update optionally. I'm going to select all of them. And then I can add my filter. I'll remove the status one, which was just added in because I had it in the first tile that I saved. So I'll delete this. From here, I can also optionally add visualizations directly from the dashboard interface, which is another way of creating content as opposed to starting in that Explore interface. So then I'll go ahead and save. And then from here, I can apply any filter. So if I want data from the last 14 days, I can then update the data that I'm looking at. And Looker is going to apply that filter on all of our tiles and update accordingly. I also would be probably remiss if I didn't mention a couple key features here that make this experience really awesome for end users. Now that I have a dashboard, right, I can also do things like configure alerts when key things happen in our data. So if I wanted to be notified when the average sale price exceeds maybe our quarterly target of $50, maybe we really want to up that average sale price to hit a certain target. I can be notified when that happens via email, via Slack, via SMS. We have a number of integrations there. We can also, of course, schedule delivery of this dashboard on a recurring basis. So if we want Looker to refresh the data that's in this dashboard and then send it out to my email address, to a Slack channel, Teams channel, to a Google Drive link, right, where we can then update a Google Sheets with the fresh data, for example. Those are all options here in a certain format. I wanted to, again, reiterate that we're not limited to just viewing data here in our dashboards or even in our Explore environment. It's really easy to share data outside of the Looker platform as well, so that you can really get up-to-date information no matter where you're working or what platform you're using. And that's it. We just went from database to dashboard in just a few minutes. So I think it probably makes sense to pivot over to the questions now, unless Alex, Sammy, Lauren, you have anything else to add?
Absolutely. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for taking us through that, the information, the demo. Love to see it. And thank you everyone for sticking with us and for all of the questions that we've received so far. So thank you, Paige. Thank you, Alex and Sammy. Before we dive into the questions, because we see there are several in the chat and some of the pre-submitted, we did just want to share a few resources. So first is the Looker community. Please, if you're not already a member, consider joining. This is where you can ask questions and receive answers from your peers, other Looker users, and the Looker team itself. So please check that out from that first link. It's also in the YouTube description. Second, we'd love to hear your feedback about this event or ideas or topics you have for future events. So please feel free to check out that second link. We'll also drop it into the chat for quick access. We'd love to hear from you, what you want to hear, what you want to see in different sessions, topic-wise or format. And then lastly, we have a few other sessions. In particular, we have another one on getting started with connected sheets for Looker, and that's on June 22nd. So we'd love to see you for that one, as well as a few others on the Google Cloud Adoption Framework, starting with Gen AI. So please see all of our upcoming events at that third link. All right. So with that, we are going to hop into some of the pre-submitted questions, switch over to the live chat as well. So let's dive in. Our first question is, how do you propose a user creates a dashboard when you have a lot of different Excel or CSV files that need to be transformed first, such as parsing column data or adding additional columns?
Okay, I'll start this one off. So if you're dealing with data that needs to be cleaned and transformed, and I'm talking about Looker Data Studio here, an option would be centralizing it before it gets to Looker Data Studio in BigQuery as part of the ETL process. And for more one-off situations, you can indicate the data sources from within Looker Studio you want to access.
Yep, and then the only thing I would add there too is that usually centralizing and cleaning up data is required to an extent. That said, you can do limited transformations within Looker Studio, and you can certainly transform data within Looker as well. So I just showed an example of how you can create an aggregate measure in Looker, for example. So sort of like business logic centered transformations, of course, can be done in Looker, but just keep in mind that Looker works by executing SQL in real time. So those transformations are going to be done in real time as a user requests that information. So if the cleansing that needs to be done is something that really needs to be done on the raw data itself, it's probably best to do it in the warehouse as opposed to doing that cleanup in Looker where it will actually happen on the fly, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I appreciate that response. And going off of the real-time information, we did have a question that was similar to that. So I'm going to hop over to that. Can you talk a little bit more about how to get information in real time as someone is looking for a real-time dashboard?
I can take that. And basically, as Paige and Sammy mentioned, we are querying your data directly from your database. So it will essentially show up in real time. We're not storing any of that data. So you should be able to see it as up to date as possible.
Yep. So you can also configure, without getting too technical in the weeds here, you can also configure caching policies to sort of balance how real time you want something to be versus the performance in the warehouse and also cost in the warehouse. So you can always set up a caching policy that requires that end users would hit the cache when loading, for example, a popular dashboard. However, it's totally up to you how you want to balance, performance versus real-time analytics. So as soon as the data is available in your warehouse, it will be available in Looker as well.
Great. All right, we're going to do one more pre-submitted here and then hop over to some of your live questions. So is it possible to add some code or scripts to automate tasks similar to AppScript of Google Sheet documents?
So I can take that one. Looker does have some integrations with a variety of pre-built blocks, and they're called blocks. If you just Google Looker blocks, they're pretty cool. And we also have a separate page for different actions that will allow you to extend the capabilities from the platform. So for example, you could send list to Marketo, as Paige kind of showed in her demo and talked about. You can send updates to Slack or Google Chat. And additionally, you can also use the scheduler to send out reports via email, again, to Slack or to GChat. So wherever you choose, there's a lot of different ways you can get your data.
Great. Okay. Why Google is having Looker Studio as well as Looker? Would like to understand the purpose or the differences between these.
Yeah, I can take a first stab. It's actually, I also just realized I never introduced myself. I'm Paige Sheridan. I'm a customer engineer here at Google Cloud, specializing in the data and analytics space. So I work every day with customers who use Looker, Looker Studio, and other analytics products at Google Cloud. And this is a question that I get constantly from customers about like when to use which, right? And I think that each tool has or is intended for different purposes. So what a lot of my customers end up doing is using Looker as the enterprise grade source of truth for all of their business logic. right? The governance, the enterprise admin capabilities, the scalability of Looker is something that is extremely powerful. However, Looker doesn't necessarily have the flexibility of Looker Studio in the sense that Looker Studio can be connected natively, not just to a warehouse, but also to a bunch of other applications, to Excel workbooks, to Google Sheets. So for sort of quick and dirty ad hoc analysis types of things where you just need an answer right away, Looker Studio can be a great tool. It's also free if you don't have the pro version, which is obviously fantastic. However, when you start needing that enterprise governance, that single source of truth, the performance of BigQuery, that's actually in your analytics tool as well. That's where Looker comes in handy. And it's also probably worthwhile to mention that we now have a connector for bringing Looker data into Looker Studio. So if you want to get the best of both worlds and have the governed metrics that are coming in from Looker, and then use those alongside maybe more like ad hoc data coming in from like a Google Sheet or something like that, that's a really fantastic way to sort of get the best of both worlds.
Great, thank you. And I am just about to drop a link to the Looker connector that you can check out there. Okay, awesome. So we did have one earlier as you were starting your demo page about, is this Looker page customizable?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that Prashant's talking about the home page here. Okay, so yeah, it's totally customizable. The one that I just showed is out of the box, and out of the box, the sort of default would be to view content that you've saved or that's been viewed by your organization recently. However, many organizations opt for a custom homepage. You can really easily design one as an admin and then set that as the custom.
Great.
Something else I didn't mention either is it's also really easy to add links into your homepage. So if you want quick links out to like Looker documentation for features that are very heavily used, for example, that's a really good use case for using those links as well.
Definitely. Also, one thing to add that I've seen with customers is that's really great is if you have like an internal wiki or a way that users need to submit a request to get a Looker license, or if you have any training that has been customized to your organization, add your links there, and then people will be able to know exactly where to go.
Great. Great point. Okay. Our next question is, would it be possible to embed graphs or results into another website? If so, how does that work? And would Paige be able to show it? No pressure.
Yeah, no, I actually should be able to show you. I won't get too in the weeds, but yeah, about half of Looker customers today use Looker not just for internal purposes, which is what I just showed you, right? What I just walked through is how you internally would set up a Looker model based on like your own company data, right? And for use internally. But again, half of our customers use Looker to power applications that are often customer facing. So Looker customers are actually using applications where there's embedded data experiences built with Looker. I can show you really quickly like what this could look like. We have a demo site that's actually based on the same data set that we worked with earlier. So it'll be really easy to show you how this looks. Window is going to be Adam Fashion. So let me just go ahead and sign in quickly, and I can just show you really quickly how you can create those experiences using either embedded content from Looker or the Looker API, which is something that we haven't really talked about. But in general, when you're building apps with Looker, you have two methods of embedding information, right? You can either take stuff built in Looker, like this map that just loaded, right? So this is something that we built in the Explore environment that you've seen in depth today, right? And then we just embedded this via an iframe into our web page. Really simple, one time. You can leverage all of the capabilities and features you get with the Looker front end with this option. And then if I use my source button here, again, this is an embedded dashboard into the site. You can also use custom components on the front end. So these are like custom web components that a developer would have built, and they're actually calling the Looker API in the back end, which means that you don't have to write raw SQL to return JSON data for your components. You can actually call the Looker API to run queries for you. And in that, you're able to still use that single layer, that modeling layer, that single source of truth for all of your metrics, meaning that if you make an update to, say, total sale price, like we just saw, that change would be reflected in your application, not only in your embedded dashboards, but also in API calls that reference that measure as well. So it really helps cut down on sort of developer time and the time to value to build something like this when you're building with Looker. We have a developer portal as well. It's called developers.looker.com. Lauren, I'm not sure if you could share that with everyone, but that's a fantastic resource if you're looking to learn more about how to get started.
Great. And please remind me the link it was, and
it's developers.looker.com. I can also pop it in the chat as well.
Got it. Everyone can have a quick link to that in the chat. Perfect. Thanks for showing that page. All right. So our next question is, can one Looker project have multiple model files? If yes, then how can we connect them?
If yes, then how can we connect them? I don't know that I understand the last part of the question, but let me explain sort of like how the hierarchy would work. So when you think about how files are organized in Looker, a set of files lives within the context of like a project, right? So I created a project as part of the demo. That project was our retail analytics project. A project tends to be integrated with one GitHub repo, right? So one set of files in one project. A project can contain multiple models. The relationship of a model to sort of the business logic is that one model can have one database connection. So if you have multiple databases, then you would need multiple models. Typically within the context of a project, you'd usually find one model per project, and a lot of organizations tend to use one centralized warehouse for most of their reporting. So in that case, you would only use one model. In terms of like the limitations though for models, recall that I created an Explorer in the context of a model, meaning one Explorer needs to be based off a single model and as a result, a single database connection, right? So if we want to analyze data across different database connections, we'd need to use a feature called merge results. Which I won't, go into like the details of, but essentially just remember one model per database connection and an Explorer where a data set needs to be based off a single model and a single database connection.
Makes sense. All right. Our next one here is, have we any solution to use CSS, HTML, JavaScript, or Python to have more personalized dashboards?
Yeah, so I'm gonna again, I'm gonna make assumptions here, but I'm assuming you mean for internal use. So for example, the dashboard that I just showed where we had some pretty simple tiles, the two KPIs and the area chart. So you can always use custom HTML in a text tile. So you can add a text tile and then do like pretty creative things like creating dynamic links to other parts of Looker or to other websites. You can actually write JavaScript or Python like directly within the tiles themselves, but we do have a roadmap item to add a little bit more customizable sort of configuration in JavaScript for the native visualizations that live in our platform. That being said, for now, you can always upload custom visualizations if you find that there are limitations to the ones that exist out of the box. So in the admin panel, you can actually upload your own custom JavaScript files and any dependencies that are associated with those files so that you can have a very customized visualization experience if you have like a niche use case that requires it.
Super helpful. Thank you. All right. And our next question, and just for your reference as we're going along, there are many links being dropped into the chat that will hopefully help support the responses that we're providing live as well. So feel free to explore and check those out. Okay. Now, our next question we'll tackle is, can we add batch data to a trial instance of Looker, is what I believe that is intended to be.
Okay, so again, I'm gonna have to make a couple assumptions here. The trial instance of Looker, I'm assuming, is our new Looker core offering where you can launch a trial instance of Looker directly from the Cloud Console. So you can spin that up directly from the Cloud Console and start working with it the same way that I just walked through. Batch data, I'm hoping means data that's been centralized in some kind of warehouse. So yes, you can connect Looker to any database. If you're talking about batch data, like in terms of like a CSV file, what I'd probably recommend in that case is that you use BigQuery and you just use the CSV upload function to upload that batch data into BQ. There's also a free tier of BQ, so uploading small files should fall within that free tier for storage at least. And then you can connect Looker to that BQ instance and then be up and running really quickly.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, just the link to getting started with that trial is there also in the chat. All right. What are the options for grouping visualizations in panels, or is there an option for multiple tabs within a Looker dashboard?
Yeah, so a lot of also like Alex and Sam, if you want to chime in here, please feel free. Good. Okay.
You're doing great.
You're doing great.
Okay. Yeah, this is a question I get a lot as well, because I think a lot of customers or developers that I work with have experience with other BI tools that have like the native tab functionality. Tableau is one. I used to work a lot in like Click and MicroStrategy, and they also have that. We don't necessarily have like a native way to create like pages or like dossiers of grouped visualizations, but we do have a number of sort of patterns for creating like a nav bar that can be dynamic. So you can create a text tile with HTML that allows you to sort of toggle between different dashboards or different parts of Looker really easily. And it creates like a tabbed like experience. It's just not something that you would build like natively in the dashboard, if that makes sense.
Got it. Great. Okay. And then we did see a couple of questions around pricing. So we're going to drop some links for you to get more information and reaching out to your account representative for more information on the differences between that. So thank you for that question. Okay. Another real-time data question. Is it possible to have real-time data feeding maybe combined with other services like Dataflow or PubSub?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, Looker's core technology is that it's a SQL generation engine. So it works by generating SQL. So that means that it needs to talk to a database, right? A SQL speaking database. So in this case, I'm assuming you're talking about BigQuery because you're referencing other Google Cloud products here. But you could certainly create a real-time pipeline that leverages Dataflow and or PubSub to stream data into BigQuery and then make it available in Looker. Again, the only limitation in Looker as to how real-time something is how quickly it gets into your data warehouse. So if you're able to build a pipeline that takes data from your source and streams it into BQ instantaneously or like nearly instant, it's immediately going to be available in Looker. So yes, it's definitely possible to have that real-time data feed. It all just depends on how you architect your pipeline.
Sounds good. And we did have a follow-up regarding the question on visualizations in panels or grouping visualizations in panels. Where did you find that? So maybe we can follow up with some other documentation, or if you have anything else to add on to this to provide a little bit more context or clarification.
Yeah, I built like an example myself. I think we probably have, honestly, maybe a community post about it, which would give you a pattern for building out something like that. It's pretty commonly done in customers, so I would be surprised if it doesn't exist out there already. I just don't have it off the top of my head. So that's hopefully something you can share after the fact.
Perfect. Yes, we will be sure to follow up with you. And in the meantime, feel free to explore the community, and we'll follow up with you on that response and any additional resources. All right. One here on Google Maps. So can you integrate Google Maps API with Looker?
So I'm assuming you mean like reading. It's hard to tell whether like which direction you're talking about. Like, are you talking about reading from the Google Maps API in Looker? Again, when I talk about Looker's core technology being reading SQL, we don't really have those integrations that you would find in other tools because it works by writing SQL to a warehouse. So you can certainly connect the Google information from Google Maps into BigQuery, load it in there, and then create via Looker. But no, we don't have like a native integration in terms of using the information from Google Maps, although we do have really robust geographic visualization capabilities as well, with the ability to do things like upload custom map layers, like topo JSON files, all of that as well.
Great. And there is a resource that we'll drop here that is more information about Google Map options. So feel free to explore that. Okay, I think there were a couple potential questions that we did not get the chance to cover, but we are coming up on time, and I do want to be respectful of that. So I am going to just surface those next steps and resources one more time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Alex and Sammy, for this time. I think given the number of questions and different topics we covered, it might be worth a follow-up, but we do have that one on Connected Sheets on June 22nd. So please join us and check out any further events with that third link. And then please let us know if there's a topic that you want us to dive into a little bit further that we covered today or that we didn't get a chance to. We'd love to hear from you in that second link, which is the feedback link. And I'm also going to drop that into the chat as well. But before closing out, just wanted to ask if anyone, Paige, Alex, Sammy, you have any final thoughts or recommendations before we close out today?
I think that covers it. Yeah, be sure to join the community. Very excited to continue the conversations. And what's great too is when customers can talk with each other, sometimes you find some fun workarounds that maybe your rep didn't think of. So it's really great to keep the momentum on the community and see what everyone is doing.
Totally.
Exactly. Appreciate it. And I love when we're able to help solve each other's problems together or, provide user feedback from real life scenarios as well. So it's always great to see how you're using the solutions, how you're using our products and working together to get the most out of them. So thank you so much again for everyone's time. We will see you in the community until next time. All right. Thanks everyone. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening.